Firstly, thank you very much for having the pleasure of being here and being a presenter in this fabulous workshop. And thank you to the Gesellschaft for PMI and to Carl. So firstly, maybe quick on myself. So I'm an integration lead in Nokia, based in Munich. And I would like today to address some topics about digitizing M&A and what we have been doing in Nokia, so what we consider our innovative approach to running complex global deals. So firstly, I'll give you a bit of an insight into Nokia, so maybe just to those that are not aware about what Nokia is doing, or also the recent changes and the history of Nokia. Then we basically will look a little bit into what is the sort of traditional way M&A and M&A integration has been performed or was performed. And then we would like to address a bit the journey that Nokia is currently traveling. And I've pointed out or tried to identify 6 changes that we have done in Nokia that we think are a bit different from it was in the past, and also giving an outlook on what we intend to do going forward, and hopefully there will be still some time for Q&A. So, what is Nokia today? Nokia is today an innovation leader in the technology sphere that connects people and things. So basically, we are combining network infrastructure, software, and services with advanced technologies for smart devices and sensors to tap the power of connectivity. So that's basically the Nokia vision. So it is not any longer the handheld device, as you may know. And in terms of portfolio, we are currently addressing, and that particularly since we have done the acquisition of Alcatel-Lucent that was communicated last year, and that was closed on the 14th of January this year. So we are now basically supplying the whole portfolio of products on the mobile side, on the fixed networks, infrastructure side, and the software and services that are related to it. Nokia has a truly global presence. We are present in around about 100 countries across the globe, and we are currently seeing ourselves as being the driver in the industry. And after the Alcatel-Lucent acquisition, we also consider ourselves the biggest, and in most of the markets are either holding a number 1 or number 2 position. So maybe to give you some facts that might be just giving a bit of a dimension. So those are the consolidated figures, Alcatel-Lucent and Nokia together as of 2015. So combined, we had a revenue of 26.6 billion. We had an R&D spending, and I think that always matters in our industry, that is pretty much driven by economies of scale, of 4.5 billion. We have a net cash position, and that's also thanks to the divestment on the mobile devices of 10 billion. And we had a workforce of 106,000 employees across the globe at the end of 2015. So now I would like to a little bit then discuss on the changes that Nokia has been going through after we have maybe just a little bit elaborated on the capacity. So on the R&D side, we have 40,000 R&D people, so that also then translates into that 4.5 billion. And nowadays, this industry is pretty much driven about scale and economies of scale, and who has basically the most capacity. And R&D is really here the crucial in a market that is extremely competitive and technology driven and innovative. And then we have another 40,000 service professionals in the organization, and if you make the math, then it actually are 26,000 people left for the rest, so to speak. And on the IPR side, we are, after the merger with Alcatel-Lucent, we are considering ourselves being the world leader in terms of intellectual property. So we are owning 31,000 patent families that are mostly held by Nokia technology. That is coming obviously from the Nokia side. And now we have this fabulous Bell Labs coming to the company. And those two organizations, the Bell Labs and the Nokia Technologies, are what we consider the innovation engine that are driving the process. So looking at the changes that Nokia has gone through, Nokia has gone through a number of major changes over time. We have been at the forefront of every fundamental change in how we communicate and connect, and that goes back to 1925 with the Bell Labs. When Bell Labs was founded, that actually coming from the Alcatel-Lucent side, so actually from the Lucent side, and as you know, that previous to Lucent it was AT&T, so there's a long history also on that side. We then went through that period of analog technology and the analog revolution, having first the long distance calls, then in the 80s cutting over from analog to digital, having then the first voice data communication happening, and then in the mid-90s we started all this journey into a mobile world, the mobile revolution, firstly with the AMS technology, and in Scandinavia, for example, and the AMS, the CNET for example, in countries like Germany, and then we went to digital with GSM in the 90s, where we had this huge hype in the market, and now we are at a new dimension. So we are now in the world of new connectivity, where we're talking about intelligent and seamless connectivity in the cloud, and obviously also the next generation to come, and that's already the 5th generation, as you're aware of. So long history of successful changes supported by acquisition and divestment. So here we will look a little bit at the history of Nokia, which has a quite long and proud history. So we celebrated the 150th anniversary last year. So the company is going back to 1865, when it was actually founded as a pulp mill, and then actually it was incorporated in 1871 as a corporation close to a city in southern Finland, in Tampere, and actually there happened to be a river that was called Nokia, and that's where the name Nokia is coming from, to cut it short. And then Nokia actually went through tremendous history. It was a conglomerate of various business activities. Nokia was in the cable market, in electronics, and in power generation, and forestry and paper. That's a little bit the root of the company. And funny enough, it also made at some time where it made rubber boots and car tires. So quite a different portfolio. And then in the 80s and early 90s, Nokia made a pretty bold decision of divesting all other activities and focus on telephony and mobile devices, as well as the mobile networks and mobile infrastructure, and spinning off a significant part of its business, and making that strategic decision to only focus on telephony. And on that journey, there have been a number of major steps and major acquisitions. It started off on the acquisition side with joining forces with Siemens Communications in 2007, then taking over Motorola in 2011, Panasonic Communication Systems, that might be not so visible here in Europe because they have been just in the Japanese market, in 2013, and finally the Alcatel-Lucent acquisition in 2015 that has just been closed. That's on the sort of incoming side. And then on the outgoing side, there have been major divestments on the network side. So it's obviously the company, the joint venture with Siemens wasn't that successful at the beginning. So also there have been major portfolio decisions to divest big parts of the business in 2012. For example, the full optical networks was divested to Corey, and the microwave business was divested to Dragonwave. The business solution was divested to Redney, and a few more. So there have been a huge portfolio cleanup. And then the other big step, obviously, in 2014 was the divestment of the mobile phone business. So selling the whole mobile phone business to Microsoft for a purchasing price of around about 6 billion. And then lastly, the divestment of the mapping services, the HERE business group that was actually sold to a consortium of German car manufacturers, including BMW, Mercedes, and Audi, at a price of 2.3 billion. That was also recently announced, and that's been now executed. So as you can see, there's a lot of change, and also from this very Finnish sort of roots of the company, Nokia is nowadays a truly global company, and our footprint in Finland is now, at least in terms of people, relatively small. So around about less than 7,000 people. Out of that, 106 are actually sort of in our home country in Finland. So that also indicates that we are quite a global entity. So now let's a little bit talk about M&A, and as you can see from our history, there has always been a tremendous need in that area, and also nowadays where the markets are relatively flat and there's a huge competition and a very limited growth in the market, M&A becomes an even more strategic process, and for that reason also we identified that we need to change our approach to M&A to basically facilitate this strategic process on a corporate level. And what we also saw, and that's basically kind of our findings, and just to a little bit bring it to the point that M&A was until now pretty much organized in silos. The tool landscape was quite disparate. The learnings from acquisitions and divestments have to a large extent been outsourced to consultants that are in the deal, and they leave the deal basically when it's actually over the top but not completed, and then also they take away all the nice learnings. The process has been quite error-prone, and it's obviously a very expensive process. I think there have been a couple of examples earlier this morning, but just to think about what it costs to bring in advisors performing the legal due diligence, financial due diligence with outside companies, this is obviously an extremely costly process. And therefore, we decided, okay, we need to find a different way. There's got to be a better way of doing it. And also we had the ambition to identify a process that actually caters for kind of small cases or standard cases up to very complex transactions. And that's actually what we have in the Nokia M&A portfolio. We have a pretty much standard cases, maybe just to give a case, like we just announced the acquisition of a Canadian software company in the telco cloud. That is around about whatever, a little more than 10 million in revenues, 70 people, software-based. So that's a kind of a standard case, but we're also doing huge transition projects. For example, we are currently divesting the Nokia China business, and we are carving that out, and we are reintegrating that into a joint venture company with a Chinese partner that is coming out of the Alcatel-Lucent transaction. And there we are looking at a project that includes around about 2 billion in sales and 12,000 headcounts with around about 25 legal entities. So that is a bit on the other side of the range. So the motivation for a different approach on the M&A side for merger integration, that we would like to integrate and institutionalize the capability to integrate and spin off businesses as a critical competency, that we will be in a position to adjust the portfolio quickly to the market requirements, and therefore also that we hopefully get a competitive advantage in that process compared to our competitors, to be just faster than the competition. And therefore, we looked at 6 changes that we have introduced to facilitate this ambition. So the first one is on targeting higher M&A maturity and deeper institutional capability. So what we noticed is that in the legacy approach, there have been a lot of frequent handovers during the process. I think I have heard it in a number of talks this morning, that typically the M&A team runs away once the deal is closed, or occasionally even before it's closed, and then throw it over the fence and leave it up to someone to pick up and to clean it up and to integrate it. Of course, that comes with a loss of information. And also what we notice is that there's a lot of perception in the air, but there are not so many facts that are actually supporting the perception, in a sense whether a transaction is or has been successful, or whether it potentially has failed. So there's certainly a lack of hard evidence in that process. So it is very subjective. So now what actually we did in Nokia to hopefully get that done better. So firstly, we started with setting up a very solid and crisp corporate transaction policy that defines, okay, what are the responsibilities, what are the approval gates, what are the touch points with the board, with the steering committees, and also how we're going to set up the structure, what are the core responsibilities in that process. Then as a second one, we developed a M&A integration playbook. That's actually what we did earlier last year, first quarter last year with McKinsey. So we actually defined a quite detailed process and how that complex matrix is going to work, and what are the dependencies and what are the responsibilities in that structure. And then last but not least, that was the next challenge was, okay, what do we do in order to make that more workable, how to bring that into practice, how to make it become alive. And we were actually searching for a tool in the market that can actually support our process, and basically a tool that ideally would also then reflect our playbook in a tool landscape that we can then utilize going forward. So again, the emphasis here was then clearly on having the capability of faster integration with a minimum of business disruption, and then of course, therefore also to improve the return on investment of each of the transaction by capturing the synergies as quickly as possible, and to become very competitive in that M&A domain, because as we all know, most or quite a few of, at least in our market of the M&A process, we are in a competitive situation. So we are in a competitive bidding process, and here times of essence. So basically the seller is driving the schedule. They give us, let's say, 3 weeks to perform the due diligence to provide a binding bid on the asset. So there's very limited time to get the best possible knowledge and to make up your mind, okay, are we going to put a lot of money on the table for that asset and for that company? So it is truly, truly important. So the corporate transaction policy was the foundation, and the very stringent process is then sort of safeguarding us to the acquisition and integration. So next is the end-to-end view and how to plan projects in that truly from an end-to-end perspective. So what we noticed is that there have been, or to some extent there are still, many scattered processes in the organization. That applies to Nokia. I guess that also applies to other organizations. So I also had quite some interesting discussion. I don't want to mention that name of the company, but I met with a huge representative from the integration office last week in Munich, and I was pretty surprised that they also don't really have an end-to-end process in their organization. So everyone is basically using his or her own methods in the process, and activities are pretty unconnected, and then basically, this is kind of the result from such a chaotic approach. So what we've been doing on the Nokia side is to put a bit more of a structure, to try to introduce an end-to-end view, having an integration plan that links the due diligence at the very beginning of the process all the way to the end. So basically we start with the market screening, where we also have a dedicated scouts in the market in all the business groups that are looking for assets that can complement our portfolio, making strategic, identifying strategic targets. Then we have a first touch point that we call the license to hunt or the license to fish with the board represented in what we call an investment committee. And this is a kind of a one-slider approach just to decide and to discuss whether it's worthwhile to continue that project. Then actually we do a bit more of a detailed project analysis, to some extent also some diligence. Is there a question or?
Just for interested whether this is your really original wording, license to hunt, license to bid, license to hunt.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure whether it's, that's what we call it. So we call it the license to hunt, license to bid, and license to sign a close, and that are basically the three touch points that we have with the board, with the investment committee, that is basically the main representatives from the Nokia board. And then depending on the size of the deal, we also have to, if it becomes the triple digits in terms of purchasing price, then actually we have to go to the board of directors. Yeah.
You mentioned integration manager provides continuity. So when do you nominate the integration manager?
Yeah, that's. Thank you for that question. I didn't mention that yet, but I was just about to do so. So thanks for being ahead of time. So that's excellent. Yeah. So basically we. I mean, that's also the change. And we used to be here around that time when actually, we came in and, disaster was already happening. So, and that we dramatically changed. So basically, folks like myself, so we are now already getting called in at a very early stage. So basically, I'm normally getting called in after the license to hunt was performed, and when we are still in the preliminary project analysis, so even way before the due diligence process starts. And now it becomes a bit of common practice without having that maybe in writing that also the integration manager is pretty much accommodating the whole due diligence process. So it's not the M&A guy. I mean, the M&A guy is ultimately responsible, but in terms of PMO, this is pretty much done by the integration manager already at this time. And then basically the M&A guy is normally stepping out latest at the closing. So it's a bit of a joint exercise between the M&A lead and the integration lead to make sure that the closing conditions are fulfilled. And then basically latest at the signing, the deal maker steps off the ship, goes off board, and then basically the integration manager is taking the overall responsibility to carry the project and through all the coming phases to the contract execution. Day one readiness preparation is pretty much done by the integration manager, and then all the way to the project implementation, and then the project exit, and that means in our language to basically hand over the business to the operational unit. And I think we had a pretty good discussion that we couldn't complete it yesterday night, and that was about what are the exit criteria for the integration manager to get sort of rid of the project. And there we have also a process, we call it the Gate 5, that has some criteria, but I think this is also maybe not fully finalized at this point.
Do we have a pool of integration managers? Is it always the same people doing it several times?
Yes, we do. Yeah. So we have around about, actually to be precise, we have 6. So I'm one of the 6.
Okay.
So in there.
Pool of 6 experts.
Yeah, so to speak, yeah. So we are clustered around the globe. So 2 are Munich, 1 in Oslo, 1 in Warsaw, 1 in Helsinki, and 1 in California and Sunnyvale. Okay, so systemize the process and create discipline. So basically what we noticed is that in the past, the legacy approach was, in the best case, there was a playbook. In many cases, there wasn't a playbook. But the playbooks have never really been fully utilized. They have been somehow gathering dust in a shelf. And also that kind of Excel sheets have been used for everything. And the last transaction that I was involved in that also caused a lot of frustration on my end was doing the Panasonic acquisition, where we still have been using Excel files for a relatively large transaction. And then having the complication then in Japan, where basically the target company was, basically no one was able to speak English, and then basically having the necessity to translate every single piece of evidence from Japanese to English, and that without having a proper tool in place, so that really truly created pretty much a hiccup. What we also noticed, too many templates. Just to consider, this is what we consider. This is actually, one of my last projects from this Canadian software company. Even relatively small, looks quite straightforward, but still, in terms of what we have been looking at, 3,000 documents have been supplied by the target. We had around about 1,000 due diligence questions, so we have been rolling out the full machinery over that poor little company, and we had around about, during the process, and we still have around about 100 team members on the Nokia side for an acquisition of a company with 70 people. So you may say, okay, this sounds a bit oversized, but honestly speaking, what we actually concluded is that we have so many experts in the organization. We are so complex. We have a matrix that at some point we need to involve the people. So it is then about, okay, how to manage that complexity and not sort of questioning the complexity. So it is really about how to manage the complexity and basically how to get rid of the Excel sheets, the PowerPoints, the document templates, the SharePoints, and all those kind of tools that are not truly connected. So for that reason, as we said, we went on a journey to look for what is in the market and what are the potential tools that can support our ambition, and to put the playbook into practice. And actually, we were looking for something that where we could actually reflect our processes to the best extent possible, and also to codify the tasks, to basically codify instructions and assignments, and having a tracking capability to make it the playbook become real, and then also to create discipline and build discipline and accountability, and also having the option to trace what was done. And I think the traceability is also, I think, an issue that has been neglected in the past, and it was not really sort of visible what was done in the past. So the next step was, or what we think and what we changed and wanted to change, was to ensure repeatability and constant learning, and not being in a position to start all over again from scratch, to reinvent the wheel, and also not to be in a position to define the process on the way, on the fly. Okay, we are going to buy that company, and now let's put a process in place. So that obviously is maybe second best. And also kind of key actions and knowledge got lost in quite a number of previous transactions, and also just the kind of the complete overview of the project was always a problem in the past, and increases also significantly the risk in transactions that we have been doing, and therefore our way forward, and what we now have introduced, is that we evolved the standard template into digital modules. So when I'm talking about a template, I'm not meaning a paper template. So when just referring to one of our reference cases at this Canadian software company, the template actually means around about 1,000 line items that we have. I think we have now actually developed that even further. So in one of the more complex cases, we already have templates that have more than 1,500 line items. And to standardize the process for various deal types, So as you know, every single transaction is different, but there are certainly similarities. So what we did is we, for example, have now developed a template for acquisitions, then a template for carve-out, and then a template for mergers. And as you know, in terms of deal structures, there are always the different types of acquisitions. So there's like, kind of the asset deal, which is, I guess, a bit more challenging from the integration perspective, at least time-wise. Then there are share deals that are around, where you can also just keep it as if you like. And then there are other structures like reverse mergers that are driven, for example, for tax reasons. So there's a lot of different deal types that we need to look at, and that we also try to standardize to the extent possible. And that's the reason why we have been selecting that modular approach, where we can basically put the digital models and templates together to basically accommodate the case to the extent possible. I mean, we need to acknowledge that we can only, get that done to a certain degree. But if we have already sort of 90 to 95% off the shelf, and that means kind of from the cloud, because it's a cloud-based service, then it's much better than just starting from scratch and just adding up the remaining 5% that are so deal specific that it's not yet been sort of somewhere recorded. And then, of course, as we go and the more transactions we are doing, hopefully that delta, that missing piece becomes smaller and smaller over time. So next topic is, and I think this is probably some topic that I guess everyone who has been working on transaction has experienced. So I guess you know what this piece is. That's a hard drive. Yeah, and I was working on a divestment case that we closed 3 or 4 years ago. Cumbersome process, difficult seller, difficult buyer in that case, and now after the honeymoon is over, we are now in the kind of divorce situation, approaching a litigation process, and then the question comes: okay, where's the documentation? Where are the files? And then it's kind of a ping-pong game. It goes, okay, now that's sitting with the M&A department. Then you're calling up a number of M&A guys and say, no, that's not with me. That's sitting with the legal department. Then you call up the legal folks. They say, no, that's not with me. That has been passed on to the operational unit. Then you're calling up the operational unit. They don't have it either. Then you think about, okay, yeah, but at that time we used the data room provider. You're calling up Intralinks or Firmex or any of those guys. They say, no, this data is deleted 14 days after the service is discontinued. So we don't even keep a backup copy. And then you're calling your legal advisor, financial advisor, and if you're lucky, you're getting bits and pieces of the documentation that you're looking for. And I guess that already indicates that you're not in a very strong position to make a case in front of an arbitration court. So making the point, in the past, documents have been not properly stored, unrecorded. Data rooms are short-lived because obviously they are very expensive if you're using external data room providers. And the first thing is to shut them down because you don't want to keep on paying for that service. And then the product team struggles for visibility. So for that reason, what we also considered as one of the changes that we did is to keep all information up to date and centrally located. And that basically starts already with the due diligence process. So basically, we're ramping up the team. We assign the responsibilities. We have the due diligence documents already on the platform. We actually record the due diligence finding. Every stream lead is supposed and urged to and forced to provide a due diligence report that we also record. We start with a risk assessment. We record team discussions, and basically start from the documentation that we have obtained to kick off the master planning for the integration plan. develop a project schedule. We're managing events like team meetings on the tool, and we are creating a schedule with all milestones, and basically also creating action items, action plans, and progress or track the progress on the tool. We also have emails in the tool, and we're also using the tool to communicate within the project team. And one of the benefits, since there's a book on project management, it's called the lazy project manager, is that once you're done as integration manager, you don't need to worry about documentation. You just close the door and it's done. It's stored. It's documented. There's no kind of cleanup needed because you already have it in one place, and you don't have to do it. And I mean, in real life, you know how difficult it is to get team members doing cleanup and documentation activities when already the next deal is in front of the door. So the last topic is on internal and external stakeholders. And what we noticed that in the past, there's been a lot of point-to-point communication. There have been a lot of round-the-table updates in these team meetings that you go around the table and everyone has a 2-minute slot to basically update the team, and the other 50 people on the call, they are doing something differently or are bored, or you never really know. Has been a lack of overview, and there have been a lot of manual consolidation being done, and then basically it's like, okay, please provide your Excel spreadsheet by Thursday evening because we have the team call on Friday, and then you have a few folks, and either internally or consultants or whoever, that are sitting there and then basically consolidating Excel sheets or PowerPoints for the team call. And we consider that as not necessarily the best and then the most efficient way of working. And then also we noticed that highly skilled and highly paid consultants have been using as a provider of manpower for doing a lot of operational tasks and not doing the kind of strategic thinking for what they actually should be used for. So what did we do in Nokia? So the Nokia approach is to bring everyone to the same table with appropriate controls, what they can do and what they can see and what they cannot see, and to use technology to manage the process and to reduce administrative work, and to continuously drive change in a way of working, and ultimately to increase then the value of the transaction, the return on investment, because obviously the integration cost is a one-time cost that is also part of the business case, and of course, the lower the integration cost in the business case, the better the return on investment and the EV, and to convince then also the decision makers that is a worthwhile acquisition to come. So basically, here the important part is to bring the all the stakeholders to the table, and that's kind of a digital table. And what we have been trying to do is then also to put external parties like financial advisors, legal advisors onto the platform. And what we also try to do, and what we are doing to some extent, is also then to bring the counterparty to the platform. So as said, being a lazy project manager, it's even better if the counterparty already puts the data into the data room on your platform, that rather than having done that by yourself. So, but I mean, obviously there's a lot of, and that's a bit what we notice and a bit of our experiences. There's a lot of hand holding needed. It depends a bit on the function. It depends on people. For some function it's easier. For some function it's more difficult. Some people get it right from the beginning. They just get an instruction and they deliver exactly 100% what you would expect. Other people are needing a little bit more support. But I think those people are mostly then also the same group of people that have been struggling with Excel templates before. So this is not then about the tool. This is then about more people and human nature and behavior. And then I think what we also notice on our side is that basically you need to figure out what works and what doesn't. So for example, like data room tools and other project management tools also, you have these kind of daily notification features in those tools. You get daily notifications what was happening and what has uploaded and what tasks you are basically due to perform. Honestly speaking, this never works. At least not in our organization. So basically, you can put a task on the tool, you can assign someone, and even if they're like 10 or 20 tasks overdue, you'd never get a response. Yeah. So people, what they do, and that's the first thing in the morning. You come in, you have like 50 emails, and then you have the automatic notification from the tool, and that's the first email that you actually put to the trash can, and you're not even looking what you're supposed to do. So that actually, what we noticed doesn't work or didn't work or doesn't work, at least for my peers. But there are like other features that actually do work. And actually Nokia is still a very much email-driven company, so email is the best thing to get attention. So what we kind of did and what we noticed worked quite well is if you basically send an email out of the tool that we are using, so basically you get as a recipient, you get a personalized email from the tool that's telling you exactly, okay, please, Jochen, there's an item, please look into that. We need your response by tomorrow. And the good part is here that also it has the benefit of linking or routing the person and directly to the tasks in the tool that's to be performed. And that actually tends to work out quite nicely. So that becomes a bit of what we used to call in the mobile world a killer application. So that works, and as said, other features that don't work. So I think the learning on our side here is that you need to figure out what works for your organization and what doesn't. So maybe to a little bit wrap up, and as said, we are just started the journey, so we are not we're still in the early stages. So, but maybe some differences that we observed so far. Firstly. We can ramp up significantly faster the project team. So that is something that we noticed. It is also a little bit the kind of discipline that we created from previous transactions. So we pinpoint someone who can actually work on the case, and then we set up that person immediately. Then also in the project and in the tool, and it's and basically that person is then ready to go. And then also as a consequence, having this process and having a tool in place, we have significantly shortened our due diligence rounds. Yeah, so we are now, for example, doing a competitive bidding in Americas with a software company, not surprisingly, and we got a time window from the seller of 3 weeks. Which sounds extremely short, but honestly speaking, we had a diligence looking at around about 2,000 documents in less than 3 weeks' time wasn't a problem, because we were sort of organized in terms of process, and we had a sort of a tool that actually could back up our needs. And also what we found so far is that the communication became a bit more effective. So also we could easily assign responsibilities of tasks. So also the way of working has changed a bit, because you don't need to call people, but you assign people in the tool, and you send them at the best this email notification and say, okay, please, we have assigned a responsibility to you, and please look into the topic. So therefore it really truly helped us to communicate more effectively and faster, and to distribute workload accordingly. So, evolving model for an ongoing journey. So basically, what we what we are now looking at is still continue to build up our own capabilities, taking an end-to-end view throughout the whole process. Systematic process fosters discipline. That's also what we noticed. And I think that the beauty of having a kind of a standardized and codified tool is that you see what people are doing and most importantly what people are not doing. Yeah, because in the past you never had really a kind of a traction to what level of detail the due diligence was performed. But here we have a platform where you can exactly see who was doing what and who wasn't doing what he was supposed to do. And then surprisingly that maybe those are the kind of the overlooks in a diligence process that can become quite expensive at the end. Continuous learnings with iterative improvements. So that's a process that we're going through. As said, we have done a few projects, but we are still in the learning and improvement phase. The deal information being available and up to date, so that's something that we also now trying to get more discipline around, and we are now having the capability of doing so, and then the stakeholders working at the same table. So our ultimate goal is then also to have in future cases the counterparty directly working with us on the platform. This is obviously a very tricky thing because you need to be extremely careful on the permissions that you grant to other parties, so that they're not accidentally can look into some deal information that you're certainly not interested to show. So that's the conclusion for today from my side. So thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions.